What's up everyone, my name is Jasper and in this video I wanted to talk about one of the most common questions that beginning bloggers have. And this question, is blogging just for people that speak English as their native language? For most people that didn't grow up learning English as its first language, it could be a little bit more difficult to get the correct style and the correct tone and the correct grammar. After all, making a website in English is much better because English is a universally spoken language, so you will just have a much broader audience. And in order to rank with your English websites, you need to have a website that reads nicely, that has correct grammar, correct style, correct tone. And if you're not a native English speaker, this could be a little bit more difficult to achieve. Every language has different orders for words, different grammar, different things that just will shine through in your articles if English is not your first language. When I look back at a lot of my articles, my very first articles, I saw that a lot of the sentences were built in a way that they would work perfectly in Dutch, but didn't necessarily work that well in English. You could definitely understand what I was writing, and it wasn't that it was bad or incorrect, it just wasn't natural for an English speaker to read. So it's a very valid question if blogging is just for people that speak English as their first language, but I don't think that this is the case. English is just a language, and like any language, you can learn this language. And with anything that you learn, it's the same. In the start, you won't be that great at it, but as you try to improve, as you work on it, and as you keep practicing, you will gradually become better. Now looking back at my own articles, you can see that the very first one just wasn't that great, and you see a very gradual increase in quality all throughout the years. And currently I'm at the point where I can comfortably write an English blog post without really having to sweat it that it doesn't read nicely. Now this is not to say that I'm perfect at it, I still make mistakes, especially in these videos I think where I'm just using different words. For example, I can remember one time I said in a video that I looked at a video instead of I watched a video. It's these very simple things that in Dutch they would make sense, but in English they wouldn't. But should all of these things hold you back? I personally don't think so. As I said, you can learn the English language, and as you learn and practice you will get better at it. And even as you just start out and you aren't at the point that you want to be at, there are so many tools nowadays that can help you. You can hire a Native American editor, someone that's going to read through the articles and make it in a more native tone. Or you can download a tool called Grammarly, and Grammarly is the one that I used a lot in the beginning and I still use today. And Grammarly just picks out all these grammatical errors that you wouldn't pick out yourself. Now Grammarly also has a pro version, which I'm currently using, whereas Grammarly, the free version, it basically just fixes grammatical errors. The pro version fixes just about anything. It fixes sentences, it fixes if you're too wordy, it fixes basically everything. And this is one of the most important tools I think any non-native speaker should have. So with just these three things, I think that any non-native speaker can start a blog and be very successful with it. Just write them yourself, and as you do that you will improve. Send over all your articles to an editor if you want to, and have all of them checked by Grammarly or Grammarly Pro. And I can assure you that if you do all of these things, you will have a very good article that reads very nicely, very fluently, and just flows great. And just to show some examples of people that aren't Native American speakers that still see lots of success, I've mentioned her a few times on the channel, and her name is Anne, and she's from yes.com. I will leave it down in the description, but she is from Israel, I believe, and she isn't a Native American speaker, but yet she still built this enormous portfolio of amazing performing websites. She's one of my main sources of inspiration, and she isn't even a Native American speaker. Now she is moving to America, I believe, but it isn't her first language. And it's just amazing to see that you don't have to be an American or from the UK or from Australia. You can do this even if you're not from any of these native speaking countries. On the other hand, you can also take me as an example. I used to have very good results. I still do have at least $1,000 a month with my blogging journey. And I'm also not a native speaker. I'm from the Netherlands, and the Netherlands are known for having very good English, but very Dutch English. We really push our own accent through when we are speaking English. And alongside, I also have a few Dutch friends that are building websites, some of them in the hundreds of thousands of page views, some of them with a bit smaller websites. But there's people doing this all over the world, and there's just no reason to not start just because you're not a Native American speaker. Now, if this hasn't convinced you already to start an English website, there's always the choice to start a website in your own language. Now, this is something I've been messing around with since the start of 2020, and I currently have two websites in Dutch. Now, the thing with Dutch websites is that there aren't that many people speaking Dutch, so My audience is about, I believe, 30 million people in the world speak Dutch. Now, not all of them are looking up things on Google. Not all of them are looking up things on Google about my topics. So the overall audience is just very small. So building websites in Dutch might not be their best choice, but you can understand that if you're making a website in Spanish, for example, there are so many people around the world that speak Spanish that it doesn't really influence the amount of traffic you're going to get. There are a few things you need to know about making websites in another language though. And the very first one, and I think the most important one, is that you really got to scale your audience. We just talked about it, but be careful with starting a website. If you're starting a website in a language that just isn't spoken a lot in the world, you just need to know that you might not get as many visitors as you would in another language. And with this in mind, you also need to know that you can't niche down too far. In English, you can basically niche down pretty much as small as you want. But if you're making a website in Dutch, like for my case, I can't go too in depth because people simply are just not looking it up. Or maybe there's only a few, maybe 10 people a year are searching these terms, and it's just not worth to write these articles. So really just make sure to scale everything appropriately. Make sure that you aren't too niche down for the amount of people that are actually able to look up your search terms, and make sure that there's an actual audience for this. I have a few articles on one of my Dutch beauty sites and it's very niche down and I just don't see any traffic on there. There's, I believe, around 5 or 10 page views a month. And that's just so incredibly low that I might as well have not written the article. Another thing is that many of the advertising networks out there, they aren't too keen on onboarding a website that isn't in English. Now I know that Ezoic always accepts websites that aren't in English, and Mediafine is known to also accept a lot of websites that aren't in English, but AdThrive, I'm not too sure how they feel about it. But I do know that all the advertising networks, they really do prefer an English website. And you also got to keep in mind that the RPMs that you're going to see with these websites that are in a different language, they will be lower. American audiences are known to be the most profitable and the most valuable in terms of advertisers. So an advertising company might pay, let's say $15 for 1,000 visitors from America, but they may only pay $7 for 1,000 visitors from the Netherlands. And they may only pay $1 per 1,000 visitors from India. So the highest paying country in terms of ads is the United States. And after that you've got countries like the United Kingdom, Canada and Australia. And after that you've got other Western countries, so the Netherlands, Germany, France. And behind that you've got all the other countries. Now still, I do think that building websites in your own language is a great option. I personally started my Dutch website simply because there just isn't that much competition in Dutch. Yes, there is a smaller audience, but there's also so little competition that it's much easier to push yourself up in the rankings. Everybody is starting English websites nowadays, and every niche is getting so saturated. It's not that there isn't any more room for other websites, but there's so many websites created every day in English, and there's a lot less websites created every day in your own native tongue. So if you're a native American speaker, then this isn't really something for you because you are an American. You probably don't even know another language, to be honest. But for most people that aren't born in these English-speaking countries, we know multiple languages. And it definitely has some merit to start a website in your own language because the competition is probably a lot lower than it is in English. Now, I would personally advise you to start a website in English simply because there's a broader audience and the audience is paying better. But if you want to try out something and you want to experiment with a new blog, maybe even in a YMYL topic or a very competitive topic, it's probably best to do it in your own language because the competition will just be much lower. So in short, there just isn't any excuse for anyone that isn't a Native American speaker to not start a blog. You have so many options, whether you're starting a website in your own language or you're starting a website in English and you use tools and you make sure that you improve over time. It might not be the best for the first year or maybe even the first few years, but as you improve and as you learn the language and as you get more fluent in it, you will see the very same improvement in your articles and probably in your pages and rankings as well. So that was it for the video. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, please consider leaving a like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!